The courtroom was hushed, every seat filled, every eye trained on the woman sitting alone at the plaintiff's table. Her name was Elena Morales, a schoolteacher from a small California suburb, and today she was not just fighting for custody of her two children, she was standing up for her rights in a case that would go on to redefine family law. Elena's story didn't start in the courtroom, though. It began in a quiet home she shared with her husband Aaron, a software engineer with a demanding job and a short temper. For years, Elena endured verbal abuse, the gradual erosion of her self-esteem, and isolation from family and friends. She stayed for the children, Matteo and Isabella, hoping that things would change. But when Aaron's behavior escalated, spilling into harsh discipline and controlling behavior toward the kids, Elena knew she had to act. Leaving was not easy. Aaron had the money, the connections, and a team of high-powered attorneys. Elena had a public defender and a modest salary, but what she did have was her truth and an unwavering determination to protect her children. The first court hearing was a whirlwind of motions and objections. Aaron's legal team painted him as a dedicated father and successful provider. They questioned Elena's mental health, her financial stability, even her parenting choices. It was brutal. Yet Elena held her ground, presenting documentation, character witnesses, and school records that detailed the emotional toll Aaron's behavior had taken on the children. Meanwhile, the media caught wind of the case. A small-time blogger had attended the hearing and posted a scathing opinion piece online. Overnight, Elena's story spread across social media, drawing sympathy, scrutiny, and attention from women's rights groups. Suddenly, she wasn't alone. Support came pouring in. Lawyers offered pro bono assistance. Therapists volunteered to evaluate the children. Even Elena's old college friend, now a journalist, reached out and offered to help tell her story. The narrative was no longer just about custody, it was about systemic inequality, the bias against mothers in court, and the uphill battle for justice. In the next phase of the trial, Aaron's attorneys introduced a custody arrangement proposal that granted him primary custody and limited Elena's visitation. The judge asked both parties to enter mediation, but after 2 sessions, it was clear Aaron wouldn't compromise. He wanted to win, no matter the cost. Elena took the stand on a Tuesday morning. Her voice trembled at first, but as she recounted the years of control, fear, and her children's tears, something shifted in the courtroom. The judge leaned in. Jurors exchanged glances. Her words weren't rehearsed or polished. They were raw, honest, and deeply human. Later, the children's guardian ad litem presented their findings. Both Matteo and Isabella had expressed fear of their father's temper and a strong preference to live with their mother. The emotional weight in the room was undeniable. By the time closing arguments came around, the case had become a national conversation. News outlets debated it, talk shows analyzed it, and legal experts predicted the verdict could reshape how courts view emotional abuse and maternal rights. The judge's final statement took over an hour. He acknowledged the evolving standards of parenting and the importance of listening to children's voices. And then, he awarded Elena full legal and physical custody. Aaron would receive supervised visitation until he completed a court-mandated therapy and parenting course. Tears welled up in Elena's eyes as she hugged her lawyer. It wasn't just a win. It was a validation of every sleepless night, every painful memory, every ounce of courage it had taken to speak up. In the months that followed, Elena's case was cited in 3 other custody decisions. Law schools used it as a case study. Non-profits invited her to speak. She didn't seek fame, but her story resonated. As she later said in an interview, "I didn't fight this battle just for my children. I fought it for every mother who's been told she's not enough, for every woman who stayed silent out of fear, for every family." The courtroom buzzed with energy as the trial resumed. Journalists scrambled to secure their seats, pens ready, cameras discreetly tucked away, and legal experts lined the backbenches, eager to witness what many were calling the most pivotal custody case in recent memory. All eyes were on Emily. Despite the media frenzy, Emily remained composed. Her legal team, led by the determined and brilliant attorney Linda McPherson, had spent weeks preparing for this phase of the trial. They knew the stakes, not just the custody of Emily's children, but the precedent this case could set for countless others. Across the courtroom, Richard sat with his arms folded. His legal team projected confidence, but tension was visible in the tightness of their expressions. They had underestimated Emily once, but they wouldn't make that mistake again. What they didn't know was that Emily had an ace up her sleeve. The next witness took the stand. Dr. Karen Levy, a licensed child psychologist. She had spent over a dozen sessions with the children and had compiled an extensive evaluation of their mental and emotional well-being. Under oath, she stated that the children exhibited signs of emotional distress linked to their time spent in Richard's home. The room fell into a hush. Dr. Levy continued, "While both parents are capable of providing for the children financially, the emotional environment is distinctly different. The children have consistently expressed a desire to remain with their mother." Richard's attorney quickly moved to cross-examine, questioning Dr. Levy's methods, her biases, and even her credentials. But Dr. Levy stood firm, her answers measured, professional, and grounded in data. Back at the bench, Linda rose and introduced evidence of Richard's recent behavior: angry text messages, sudden disappearances for work trips, and even the testimony of a nanny who'd seen the children left alone for extended hours. Each piece built a narrative. While Richard might love his children, he hadn't prioritized them. Meanwhile, Emily's life was a contrast. Photos, videos, and testimonies illustrated a stable, nurturing environment. School records showed improvement in grades and behavior since the children had been staying with her. The teachers and counselors provided statements of how Emily had been consistently involved and responsive to her children's academic and emotional needs. As the days passed, support for Emily grew. Outside the courtroom, women's advocacy groups began showing up with signs: justice for mothers, every child deserves a voice, and equality in custody now. They weren't just there for Emily, they were there for every mother who had been overlooked, silenced, or dismissed. But the trial wasn't without its hurdles. Richard's team introduced footage from a private investigator. In the video, Emily was seen arguing loudly with a friend outside a coffee shop. They tried to frame it as emotional instability. The opposing counsel played it dramatically, pausing at frames where Emily appeared distressed. But Linda was ready. She reminded the court that the video was taken without context. During a moment when Emily had just learned her ex-husband had filed a surprise injunction to restrict her travel with the kids. The context painted an entirely different picture. Emily then took the stand. Her voice, though slightly shaky at first, grew stronger as she spoke. She didn't play the victim, she told the truth. About the sleepless nights, the fear of losing her children, the humiliation of being made to feel less than because she wasn't the breadwinner. "I'm not perfect," she said, "but every decision I've made was with my children's best interest at heart. They are my world. I'm not trying to take them away from their father. I'm trying to give them a chance to grow in peace, with love stability, and the freedom to be children. The court fell silent. Even Richard looked down. That evening, media coverage exploded. News anchors recapped the testimony, influencers shared clips, and hashtags like Number Justice for Emily trended nationwide. Legal analysts called it one of the most heartfelt testimonies they'd seen. In the judge's chambers, Isabella sat alone in her attorney's office, the ticking of the wall clock echoing louder with each second. The court's temporary ruling had granted her partial custody, but only for weekends and supervised weekdays. The pain of knowing her daughter was growing up without her daily presence gnawed at her. It wasn't just a legal battle anymore, it was a war for her motherhood. Her lawyer, a seasoned and empathetic woman named Karen, placed a reassuring hand on Isabella's shoulder. "We've come a long way. Now it's time to fight with every piece of evidence we have. He's not invincible." Across town, Nathan was in a different world, celebrated for his musical comebacks, praised for his philanthropic endeavors, and still portrayed by the media as a doting father. His publicist continued spinning narratives that painted Isabella as unstable and manipulative. The strategy was working. Fans rallied behind him, and sympathy poured in through fan letters and social media. But behind the curtains, cracks began to form. Karen and her legal team had uncovered critical information, emails, financial records, and testimonies that exposed Nathan's manipulation of the legal system. A former nanny, once silenced by a confidentiality agreement, agreed to testify about Nathan's temper and the emotional neglect Bella experienced under his roof. Another piece of evidence, a secret therapy session Isabella had recorded with Nathan's consent, painted a clearer picture of his gaslighting tactics. Isabella knew the next hearing would be pivotal. In court, Karen presented their findings meticulously. The judge listened intently, watching the video of Nathan dismissing Isabella's concerns and threatening to alienate her from Bella if she didn't comply. The courtroom was silent. Nathan's team countered aggressively, accusing Isabella of invading privacy, emotional instability, and media manipulation. But their claims began to wear thin. Isabella's calm demeanor and evidence-backed arguments were making an impact. The public's perception began to shift. Isabella gave a carefully worded interview, her first since the trial began, on a national morning show. She didn't play the victim. She spoke about motherhood, sacrifice, and the need for courts to hear both sides fairly. Her words resonated, especially with other women who had gone through similar custody battles. Support groups reached out. Legal advocacy organizations offered to assist. The movement grew. Isabella's battle was becoming more than personal. It was emblematic of a larger issue within the justice system. During the next court session, the judge ordered a child psychologist to conduct a neutral assessment of Bella's well-being. Over weeks of observation, interviews, and environment assessments, the report concluded that Bella was showing signs of emotional distress while under Nathan's primary care. She appeared anxious, withdrawn, and confused about her parents' conflict. Isabella was heartbroken reading the report, but she also saw hope. It was objective proof of what she had been trying to convey for months. At the final hearing of the season, Karen stood confidently, concluding their argument with a simple but powerful statement. This case is not about fame or fortune. It's about a little girl who deserves stability, love, and truth. Her mother has fought not to win a court case, but to protect her child. As Isabella left the courthouse that day, she felt something shift. Not in the verdict, they were still waiting on that, but in the air. She had reclaimed her voice. And that in itself, was a kind of victory. But the story was not over yet. The most crucial decision, the final verdict, was still to come. Isabella knew the journey wasn't done. But for the first time, she believed justice might finally be within reach. Her words rang out in the quiet courtroom, each sentence resonating with hard-earned strength. Nora had reached the final chapter of her legal odyssey, and although her eyes showed the fatigue of years spent fighting for her child, they also reflected an unwavering resolve. Across the aisle, Marcus shifted uncomfortably. His legal team whispered among themselves, their arguments now thin, unconvincing in the face of the evidence and Nora's courage. The judge, a stern yet fair man, leaned forward to deliver his ruling. The court recognizes the extensive efforts of the petitioner, Nora Jameson, in securing a stable and nurturing environment for her daughter, Lily. It is clear that her actions were in the child's best interest, even when met with opposition. Custody will be granted solely to Ms. Jameson, with appropriate visitation rights arranged for Mr. McAllister. A wave of emotion passed through the room. Nora's attorney gently placed a hand on her arm, offering a subtle gesture of congratulations. Nora closed her eyes for a moment, letting the relief wash over her. This wasn't just a legal win. It was a victory for justice, for motherhood, and for every woman who had ever been told to sit down and accept the system as it was. In the weeks that followed, Nora worked closely with her therapist and legal advisors to ensure Lily's transition into her new life was as seamless as possible. She returned to work, not because she had to, but because she wanted to show Lily that life moves forward and that we grow stronger through our battles. News of the case had spread beyond her local community. Nora received messages from women across the country, mothers, daughters, even legal professionals, praising her bravery and asking for advice. She never imagined her personal pain would become a symbol of empowerment for others. With her newfound platform, Nora partnered with advocacy groups focused on family law reform. She was invited to speak at conferences, participated in podcasts, and eventually helped launch a support network for women in custody disputes. Her story became a case study in law schools for how determination and truth could change precedent. Marcus, though granted visitation, began to realize the consequences of his actions. The media exposure had cast a long shadow over his reputation, and his manipulations were now public knowledge. While he attempted to repair his image, it was clear that Nora's light now outshined his efforts. As the years passed, Lily grew into a confident, articulate young woman. On her high school graduation day, she stood at the podium, valedictorian of her class, and thanked her mother. To the woman who never gave up, who taught me the meaning of strength, and who reminded me every day that I was worth fighting for, thank you. In the audience, Nora wept, her heart full. This moment, this singular moment, was worth every court hearing, every sleepless night, every tear shed in silence. And as they walked out of the school auditorium hand in hand, Nora looked toward the future, not as a survivor, but as a trailblazer. If this story moved you, inspired you, or gave you hope, please consider subscribing to the Verdict Diaries. Every day, we share stories that uncover the truth, expose injustice, and celebrate those who rise above. Your support helps us continue to shine a light on the cases that matter most. Until next time, stay informed, stay inspired, and never underestimate the power of your voice.